toy that drive and the Bigfoot stories.
Head to Maverick for a smooth, rich cup of wine.
Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? All right then, let's do this.
Bigfoot sighting was at a very young age, about 10 years old, and we'd been staying at some family of mine down in Brown County, Indiana, and it was, I'm going to say probably around the middle of summer, because everything was pretty greened up and all this. Nice warm weather, being kids. It was me and my cousin and some friends of his there in a little area that they lived in. We'd been playing outside for biggest part of the time we was there. It was during that times, that kids didn't have the Xboxes and stuff. Instead, we was always out playing. Pretty much got chased out of the house anyway. But we decided that we wanted to go back to the woods. It was right there behind my aunt's house. And being young boys, we were naturally had the adventure kind of thing going on. We wanted to go out and venture through the woods and explore and all this. None of us had ever expected to see anything like we did that day. It was something that a lot of people have looked at me like, how could such a young kid remember something like this? But anytime you have anything that really stands out, I guess, I'm not really liking the word too much, but I can't think of any other word for it, but traumatizes you, it'll stand to you, it'll hang on to you for forever. And that day, I definitely had this stand out. We had been walking down this trail. After we had decided to go in, venture into the woods, we found a little trail. And it was a fairly narrow trail, meaning that we had to walk in like a single file line. And the first boy went ahead of us, and I went in behind him. And my cousin and a couple of his friends, they kind of followed in behind us. We went through for quite a while, and again, never really suspected anything. Nothing was out of the ordinary. I don't even remember us really even talking or saying nothing. We were just walking and checking out the woods itself. A little boy that came up, that was in front of me, he came up to this, like a small valley there. And just about the time he got to it, he had stopped. And when he stopped, I stepped on around him to go ahead and look on down into what that was in front of him there. And just as I made my way around him, it almost came to a stop myself. Well, that's when I tell a lot of people Bigfoot jumped into my life. Now, at that time, I didn't know what a Bigfoot was. I had no clue. I don't even recall ever hearing anybody ever make mention of it. But from my left, this incredibly hairy, big, and the hair was extremely black. It jumped down in front of me, and it's like when you jump out of the back end of a pickup truck and you kind of bend at the knees and then stand back up. exactly what this did. I didn't look up, like looking up at its face or anything. I was just in shock. I didn't know what this was. I felt it when it hit the ground. I felt that thud, and then I felt the wind off of it as it stood up. It tore off to my right. It never made any sounds. It never had any kind of odors that I remember or anything. But I do know that day I learned about Bigfoot, and I learned about it in a manner that I really don't know how to say it besides it jumped into my life. And ever since then, Bigfoot in and out of my life over a great deal of years. I'm 53 now, and this has been the better part of 40 years that I've had this amazing being in everything from sightings to encounters. Just some amazing encounters. Getting back to the story of the first time, like I say, I remember just seeing that hair and it running off. We left out of there very quickly and went back home, told our parents. They fair warned us to stay out of the woods, which at that time wasn't a problem, because I think all of us are still shaking pretty good from what we just seen. But I let it go for a long time, never really spoke of it or said anything.
Keeping it
Just kind of
real.
went on about my life. And it was after I got into the Army and ended up down in Fort Stewart, Georgia. We were out on some light maneuvers. And the guns, I was in an artillery unit, and our guns had went silent for the night. And I got the ever popular task of pulling game guard, meaning that I would go up the edge of the road where all the guns came in. We'd have to sit out there in the dark with just a telephone that had a piece of wire run back to our command. And have with some weapons, but they were all loaded with blanks. And I had one buddy with me. We'd sit out there in this foxhole, and it was extremely quiet. I remember looking down that old gravel road, seeing the big old tall Georgia pines and the big dark silhouettes of that full moon. It was beautiful at night, real peaceful. Well, that's when Bigfoot decided to make his debut again. We got to hearing something walking very heavy, and it was definitely on 2 feet. And the time in between the steps let me know that whatever this was fairly large. My buddy it was. And at first I wasn't for sure, but then that day down there in Brown County came back. And it stood out to me. I think we're getting ready to see another one. Well, and I'm great deal of years. Even after I got out of service, I never really told nobody. Then probably, 10 years, something like that ago. It's been a while. I ran across a buddy, we made a new friend. He was a Marine. He's a veteran buddy. We went down to all places back into Brown County, Indiana. And I've been talking to him a little bit about, the two encounters that I'd had, the sighting and the encounter. And he kind of shrugged it off. He didn't really buy into it. Well, that night things changed. The very first time we went back on this property to camp out, things changed. It's when we had tree knocks that were incredibly loud and close. On this property, we had everything happen to us there. We had discovered tracks. We had a tree limb thrown at us one night up behind our tent as we were standing by the campfire. We had a couple of young ones come into camp one night after we'd already crawled in our tent. You could hear them outside playing around with the coolers and stuff. You could hear, it just sounds so bizarre, but this is truly what happened. The young ones, when they're cutting up, if you will, they have a laughter, and it sounds just like human children laughing. It's the first time I'd ever heard that. Still not knowing what these are, not having any idea, and only having that one sighting at that time. Still wasn't for sure I wanted to see one. Well, that wish got answered not too long after all that happened. I'd taken my wife down to the same spot. It was very early spring. Grass hadn't greened up yet or nothing. She wanted to walk out and see where we camped, I've been telling her about all these encounters and stuff that have been going on. We went out. She decided she wanted to walk down the hill behind the campsite there, just to kind of look around and see what it was like. We got down to the bottom and we heard 3 really deep, sharp whistles. It's almost like an alert. Well, at first she didn't know what it was, and I had a real good idea right away. And she proceeded to ask me, what is that? And I said, it's not a bird. I said, just stand still and start watching, start looking around. Well, she starts looking around, and then that's when she got my attention and said, what is this? About 20, 30 yards from us, there was one laying on the side of the hill, and it was just laying there, kind of on its side. It was taking its hand, laying the grass over, looking at us. This thing was amazing. It was just amazing to see this that close and out in the open. And it was even more amazing to the fact that I didn't even see it until she spotted and pointed it out. Never felt threatened, never felt like we was in harm's way, and it just kind of laid there and kept easing that grass over with that massive hand. It was extremely cold black. Now that's the first time I got to really see one like that. And for those that don't really know what a Bigfoot looks like, because there's a lot of people that has a curiosity but has never had the opportunity to get out in the woods for whatever reasons. Imagine, if you will, a football player, like a big lineman. Most of your linemen are very, very large individuals. Some of these Bigfoot will make linemen look like children. it's hard to really put into perspective just how tall and the stature of the muscular definition and everything is just absolutely amazing. They are very human-like. If you could imagine the fur not being there and just being the Bigfoot itself, it would look like a very powerful, strong, bodybuilder type human. Very thick, very muscular. The head sits pretty much right on in between the shoulders. There's hardly any neck at all to it. But the mass, the thickness of their head and everything where it sits on their shoulder is just, it's really hard to put into words. Their hands are just like a human's hands. Their feet, everything. With couple of smaller differences in their feet. On a human's foot, if you take your bare foot and place it in the dirt and then pull it straight back up, you can see an instep of where your foot is. And it's very obvious that you're a footprint. Now when you find a footprint of a squatch, it'll have the same toe definition and everything to some degree, obviously a lot larger. But the foot won't have so much of an instep. It's more of it's almost like a rectangle shape, if you will. It's more squared off, it's more like a pad, like a elephant's foot. On the bottom of an elephant's foot, it's more like a pad. That's what these look like, except about midways, you'll be able to see the metatarsal break, where the foot actually kind of bends. Outside of that, these are so human-like. It's hard to imagine that they've been in hiding for so long and not really been seen more often, because how much they seem to be so curious. You would think that they'd be more out and you'd be able to see them more, but for whatever reasons, they're very reclusive. They don't like to be out too much, be seen. But we watched this amazing being for probably 15, 20 minutes. And we proceeded to ease away from it, go back up the way we came. It had gotten up, it made its way up the hill from us, got behind a tree, and was leaning over to the side looking out at us. A lot of people call that because they're peeking around the tree. Actually, my wife is totally blown away. I just could not believe that her first time out ever doing anything like that, and then she gets a Class A sign like this. A lot of people's asked me, well, wasn't you afraid? Wasn't you worried? For some reason, I wasn't. I really wasn't. I was more amazed, more happy to see these. Now, I've had times where I go to a place right there in Brown County again. And Brown County, for me, it just seems to be drawn there. I just feel like that's where I gotta be. But I go down there I had one incident where it was amazing. I had been out in the woods by myself that night, was on my parabolic and was listening. And I got to listen. Call tonight, crawl, sleeping bag, and get up the next day and go out and do some daytime looking. I got back to my truck, throw the sleeping bag out the back end, close the lid down on the topper, lay down. It wasn't just a minute or so, I got this strange feeling I need to get up and look. I need to wake up, I need to look. I wasn't asleep, I just need to open my eyes and I need to look. I got that feeling, I don't know why. And when I did, I raised my head up slightly and looked straight out the back of the truck. And there he was. Massive. 4 foot or better at the shoulders. Standing there, bent down and looking in the back end of my truck at me. Beautiful. Power, I mean, just, you could just see that the power, just in the size. Never felt threatened. Never felt like anything was going to happen. I don't know why. But I proceeded to raise on up because I had to get a better look. And when I did, he stood upright. I couldn't tell you how tall he was because I couldn't see. I was trying to get out of that sleeping bag. That thing had me hung up. But I could see when he turned to the side and just walked away. Now I've had people ask me about some of these encounters, these sightings. Ask me, don't I fear, have any, any kind of feeling of being scared or worried, concerned or anything like that. I have a fear, but it's a respecting fear. I respect them and have just enough fear to know that what they could do if they were provoked. But when I do go to the woods, I know that I've had the juveniles follow. I can see them, I can hear them. Had the adults come in close at night. Those red eyes will stay out just a little ways from me, but they'll stay and they'll watch. I can see them out there. I've even had them come up behind me when I had a really small flashlight. I was trying to get back in my truck for the night. I was going to bed down. You could hear them coming up behind me, rustle around just a few feet away. And when I turn around to look, they take off. It was like little kids playing with you. And finally, I laid my flashlight down, pointing inside my truck so it wouldn't be on. I just turned around. I said, all right, you guys want to come up and play, that's fine, but give me a minute, I got to go to bed. Crazily enough, that's exactly what they did. They didn't bother me until I tried to lay down, and then I could hear them back up around the truck again. Now, people's asked me also about the fear, but they've also asked me, what kind of calls do you make? Now, I've gotten the privilege of being under the teaching of this one individual. I won't mention his name. But he had told me that you need to talk to the forest people. And I had him explain to me what he meant. So he proceeded to tell them, thank you for letting me be in their woods. Let them know I'm not there to harm them or nothing. And just by doing that, the encounters have gotten so great. They'll come up to the truck. You know, there've been times even when I'm not even in bed, be on the other side watching them play around out there in the woods and see their eyes moving around. Turn around and be one of them up beside my truck. As soon as it realizes I'm looking at it, it'll take off. It's like they love to come in. They know that there's not going to be any harm done to them. Like I say, I've been dealing with these off and on for a little over, don't go out there expecting them to be the warm, fuzzy, cuddly kind of things you can just go out there and be friends with. You go out and you show respect, treat them with respect. Don't be out there making a bunch of racket and stuff. Just go out and enjoy. And they will come up to you. They will. It'll take time. They'll have to get to know you and warm up to you, especially if you keep going out to the same spot. But they will come to you. Now, after all these years, I've been back out again just this year. Last year I was out an incredible amount of time. Had several encounters. Had them come up to me. You know, up there real close. I had one that was close enough. If it would have reached out, it probably would have touched my hand as I held my hand out to it. I couldn't see it because of all the dark, but I could definitely feel its presence there. You could hear it. knew it was close. But I try not to push the boundaries with them too much. Because I still, like I say, I don't know everything. But what I have learned is they love to be talked to. They love the respect. You leave them gifts. I try to leave them stuff like apples, stuff like that. They like that. They left me gifts. They brought me back
Parasite.
rockers. I'll leave it on my truck. They left me one. I don't know where he got it, but he ended up like a marble. It was like a glass. They brought it and left it for me. And just amazing things like this that happened over all these years. Probably just for all these encounters and sightings, and I want to get a group started. We got to get my story out. There's so much more I can tell. So I started with Bigfoot in Indiana that we found on Facebook.
If you're going northbound, there's traffic.
Some of the stories I've heard,
Like
and I know
a lot of
my
traffic.
stories were not when I was doing some others, but
So,
what I've had happen is nothing short of amazing. I'm just looking forward to getting back out there again and spending time with them. I'll be going back out this weekend. I'm looking forward to spending more time with the forest people. My name is Matt McGuire. This is my story.
First sighting of a Bigfoot was in 1989 on October 1st, opening day of bow season. Me and my buddy Jeff, we were going out hunting in our little spot we have up in Walhalla. And it was about 4:30 in the morning. He come pick me up in his truck and stuff, and we went out. We got out to our spot where we were going to be hunting that morning. And we got out of the truck and got all our bows and everything ready and got all our sprays and stuff that we were going to use and stuff. So we take to our tree stands. Well, to get to our tree stands, we had to go over this railroad track that runs east and west. Kind of built up on like a big berm, goes up in the air. It's about 6 feet up in the air from the flat ground where the rest of the forest is. And so we got our stuff and go towards the steer stands and the railroad tracks. We were just getting ready to cross, and I happened to look towards the east. And I'm looking, it was a full moon out, really quiet, no sound in the woods, a little chilly. And I look and I see something coming up on top of the railroad tracks there. I told my buddy Jeff, I go, hey, what is that? He goes, I don't know, is that another hunter? We didn't see nobody come in through the two track that we came through, so we didn't know if there was somebody else hunting in there. And it finally got up to the top, and I'm looking, and I'm going, that ain't no guy, man. I go, that's way big to be a man. My buddy's going, he goes, well, what is that? He goes, I don't know. Neither one of us had binoculars, so we could see it. And it started coming closer to us because I could see the outline of it really good. And this thing was huge, man. I'm talking 4x8 piece of plywood. This thing was at least 5 foot at the shoulders. Huge. 10 feet tall at least. Had to been at least 10. It was almost even with the railroad track sign. So we're sitting there, and it stopped. And I told my buddy Jeff, I go, wait a minute, let me go down on the other side of the cul-de-sac here off the tracks and see what it does. So I walked down on the edge of the rocks there off the railroad tracks, and then the thing followed me down, and it stood there. I'm going, what is going on? What's this dude's problem? I don't know what it is. I can't wrap around my head what it is. So I come back up to where my buddy was still standing up on top of the railroad tracks, and the thing followed me back up. So my buddy, he goes, I'm gonna get my flashlight out. And he had pretty power. He had one of those Meg flashlights, and he flashed it down there, and we couldn't really see it that well. The light is so dim in the thing. It was just pure black. But you can see the whole outline of it really good with the moon being behind it. So I go, Jeff, what should we do? I said, go back to the truck. He goes, I said, no, I'm going to the tree stand. That's what I told Jeff. So I started walking back down, and then the thing started coming closer to us again. And by this time, it's probably, I'm going to probably say 35 yards. Well, then we could see it pretty good. You could see the square chin, eyes sunk back in, flat head, didn't have a cone head. Big shoulder, big hands, massive hands. Tapered down towards the waist, legs were big calves. And then by that time, I didn't know what else to do. I was just still standing down there on the bottom, on the other side of the railroad track. My buddy standing there. And my buddy started crying. And I heard some weird sound, and my buddy's peeing himself. And I looked down at myself, and I even wetted myself. And I didn't even know what to do. I was like in shock. I couldn't move. So I finally snapped out of it, and I said, Jeff, we got to get to the tree stand. We can't make it back to the truck. And our tree stands were only like 40 yards away from the railroad tracks. So finally, my buddy, he snapped out of it. He goes, what are we going to do? Go back to the truck? I said, no, run to the tree stand. So we ran to the tree stands, got up there. My tree stand was further back than my buddy Jeff's was. And there was no way in heck I could have made it to my tree stand. It was further back. So I went up his ladder stand with him. We're both on his ladder stand, just sitting there shaking. He dropped his bow. I still had my bow. I was shaking like a leaf. And then we were looking around to see if we could see anything. So I didn't know if the thing was going to chase us or what was going on. And then all of a sudden we heard a big crash coming down through the swamp that was in front of us, which was facing, my buddy's tree stand was facing north. And we were looking to the east again. And that's where the big swamp was. And the thing came down into the big swamp, just breaking limbs and just making tons of noise, screaming, god awful screams. And then it got quiet for a second, and then we heard another one, but it had a different pitch to it, like it was something completely different. And then all of a sudden the other one started up again, and then we heard like a big commotion going on, branches and trees snapping and stuff. And then all of a sudden we heard a big splash into the river, like something jumped into the river, and then it got all silent again. And by that time, it finally got daylight, and we're sitting there just shaking like we were freezing to death. And we sat up there for till at least 8 o'clock. And then finally we got down, we got enough nerve to get down, and we ran back to his truck, and then we took off. My second one was November 2020. It was on the 7th. I shot a 10-point buck, and I was sitting in a ground blind at the time. And my deer took off. He ran off. I seen I hit it, made a good shot on him. And so I figured I'd give it a little bit of time because it was a good shot, but I wasn't quite sure because I was using a crossbow at the time. And it took off towards the north and went towards the west, towards Lake Michigan. So I hunt right next to the sand dunes there. And so I sat there for about 45 minutes. I called my son up to come help me track it and drag it out of there. So he finally shows up about an hour later. We started tracking my deer. And then we get down, I don't know, about about, I'd say 300 feet maybe in front of my tree stand. There's another 2-track that comes down through there. So we start walking that 2-track, and the deer, I was tracking the blood, and he started going down the road, which was kind of strange to me. And then it cut back in and going up towards the sand dunes. And me and my son heard a big commotion again. And then I'm looking up on top of the dunes there. And I seen something big and black. I just seen the outline of it. And then I seen something rolling down the hill. And it made a big crash when it came to the bottom of the holler. And I couldn't see it no more because the holler went down from where I was standing. I couldn't see it no more because it dipped down. And then I seen the other thing still standing up on top of the hill. And it kind of turned to the south. I seen it turn, so it kind of rotated like a human would, but it was too big to be a human. And then I said, well, I started freaking out then because I started getting flashback from the first time I seen something. So I took my son. I said, well, we'll go back to the house and we'll sit for a couple hours and we'll come back and track it. So we waited, and my son, he had to go to work, so I went back out and I started tracking this thing again, my deer. And I got up on top of the dunes where it came, and I seen where the deer was laying. There was a good section of blood there. And then I found a leg. So I said, okay, what's going on here? And I didn't see no coyotes that day. And it wasn't a coyote attack anyway. You could tell it was just like ripped right off. So I walked another about 70 yards, and I found another leg.
See that?
And I said, oh, I'm done. I turned around, I went back to my car, and that was it. So that was my second little encounter I had. The third one I had was me and my son were swimming in the river, in the Branch River. And my son was down there.
Where do they keep popping up? I just want to show you that. This is the first time I've seen the sun rising. Like, that's really weird. Let me put this back on. It's always sneaking out. Seriously, is it gonna do this one here? Sneaking out too. Sunrise. be? Where's it coming out of? There? Can't really get good sunrises here. They suck. Alright, bye-bye.